Some places don't need monsters to feel terrifying. They only need silence, a trail, a forest so old it feels like it remembers things. And one simple warning. If you hear something behind you, in the Appalachian Mountains, don't look back. No one can fully agree on where that rule came from. Some say it's old mountain wisdom. Some say it's just another internet horror myth. And some say it doesn't matter where it came from, because once you're alone in those mountains, once the fog starts moving between the trees, once the woods go quiet in a way they shouldn't, that rule suddenly feels very real. Tonight, we're going deep into one of the most unsettling ideas ever attached to Appalachia, the unwritten rules of the mountains, and why the most important one might be the simplest of all. Never look back. If stories like this fascinate you, the ones that live somewhere between folklore, fear, and the unknown, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you've ever heard a warning, a legend, or a strange rule tied to the woods where you live, leave it in the comments below. And share this video with someone who loves dark mysteries, forgotten folklore, and stories that stay with you long after they end. Because tonight, we're stepping into the mountains. The Appalachian Mountains are some of the oldest on Earth. Older than the Atlantic Ocean. Older than the idea of America. Older, in a strange way, than the stories people have tried to pin onto them. They stretch across the eastern United States like a long spine of stone and shadow, crossing through states, counties, back roads, forgotten towns, and forests that can feel endless once you step inside them. And that is part of what makes Appalachia so unsettling. It is not just a place. It is a scale, a reminder that no matter how modern the world becomes, there are still landscapes big enough to swallow certainty whole. During the day, those mountains can look beautiful. Green ridges, blue haze, long valleys full of wind and distance. But beauty changes fast in places like this. When the light fades, the same mountains begin to feel older, closer, heavier. The trees stop looking harmless. The silence stops feeling peaceful. And every trail starts to carry a question. How far would you have to go? Almost every Appalachian warning, because unwritten rules do not appear out of nowhere. They come from people learning, over generations, that some places demand a different kind of behavior. Not necessarily because the land is cursed, not because every legend is literal, but because certain environments punish arrogance. If you grow up near harsh weather, steep ridges, deep hollows, and black woods where sound moves strangely, you start to develop instincts. And then those instincts become habits. Those habits become warnings. And those warnings become stories. Don't wander too far after dark. Don't follow a voice into the trees. Don't answer something you cannot see. Don't whistle at night. And if you hear something behind you, don't look back. The power of that warning is almost perfect, because it tells you just enough to scare you, but not enough to comfort you. It doesn't say what is behind you. It doesn't say why looking is dangerous. It doesn't even promise that something is there. It just leaves a door open in your mind. And once that door is open, fear does the rest. That is how the best folklore works. It does not hand you a monster. It hands you a possibility. And possibility, in the dark, is often worse. Because a monster has limits. A possibility does not. The moment someone says, "Don't look back," your mind immediately begins building the thing you are not supposed to see. A shape, a sound, a distance, a face, maybe, or maybe something worse than a face, something almost human, but not enough. And now the horror is no longer outside you. It is in your head. That is why this single Appalachian rule has become so magnetic. Transforms the listener into a participant. You are no longer just hearing a creepy saying. You are placed inside it. You are on the trail. You are alone. You hear a footstep behind you that does not match your own. And now you have to decide. Do you turn around, or do you keep walking, knowing that every second you refuse to look makes the unknown larger? That is where Appalachian horror becomes different from ordinary ghost stories. It is not always about what jumps out. It is about what lingers just outside explanation. About the uncomfortable sense that these mountains are not empty. Just is exactly why the internet became obsessed with Appalachia in the first place. Over the last few years, the Appalachian Mountains have been turned into a kind of modern horror stage. Online, people talk about the rules of the mountains as if they are ancient laws. They repeat warnings in dramatic whispers. They tell stories about hearing their names called from the woods, about strange lights, about things moving between the trees, about roads you should never drive at night, about old mountain customs that outsiders are not supposed to question. Some of these stories are based on real folklore. Some are exaggerations. Some are probably pure invention. But that mix is exactly what makes the whole thing so effective. Because the internet did not create the fear. It only gave that fear a new costume. Long before social media, people already understood that forests could feel intelligent. Not literally intelligent, maybe, but aware in their own way. A place where every sound matters, where direction becomes fragile, where night changes the meaning of everything. The online version of Appalachian horror often turns that feeling into quick, repeatable rules. Simple phrases. Never whistle at night. Never answer the voice. Never look back. And whether those exact wordings are ancient or not almost stops mattering because they feel old. They feel like something that could have survived for generations, carried from porch to porch, from one family member to another, not because anyone could prove it, but because nobody wanted to test it. That is what makes the best warnings believable, not evidence. Consequence. Nobody needs to prove a rule if the fear of breaking it is already enough. And that brings us back to the strangest part of all this. Why this rule? Why? Don't look back. Why not say, run? Why not say, hide? Why not say, leave the woods immediately? Why that specific action? Because looking back is not just movement. It is acknowledgement. It is recognition. It is a decision to turn uncertainty into something visible. As long as you keep facing forward, the danger behind you still belongs to the unknown. It has not fully crossed into your world, but the moment you turn around you give it form. You allow it to become real. And in folklore, there has always been something dangerous about seeing what should have stayed unseen. Some doors are supposed to remain closed. Some names are not supposed to be spoken. Some paths are not supposed to be followed all the way to the end. And some things are not supposed to be looked at directly. The Appalachian version of that fear is especially powerful because it happens in motion. You are not standing safely in a house, hearing a story. You are moving through a place that is already larger than you, darker than you, and older than you. And now the rule is forcing you to keep going without clarity. That is psychologically brutal, because human beings hate unresolved threats. We want to know where the danger is. We want to identify it, locate it, classify it, and decide what to do. But, don't look back, denies you all of that. It takes away the comfort of knowing. And in return, it gives you something worse. The burden of imagination. Every second becomes stretched. The leaves behind you shift. A twig cracks. Maybe it is a deer. Maybe it is another hiker. Maybe it is only your own nerves echoing through the dark. Or maybe it is exactly what the rule was warning you about. You do not know. And because you do not know, the mountains feel alive with intention. That may be the deepest reason this rule survives. It captures a truth about fear itself. Fear grows best in incomplete pictures. The less you show, the more the mind contributes. The more the mind contributes, the more personal the horror becomes. Your version of what is behind you will always be more effective than anything a storyteller could fully describe. And maybe that is why the line feels so strong in Appalachian settings. Because Appalachia already supplies the perfect incomplete picture. Fog, distance, black tree lines, narrow trails, remote roads, old cabins, abandoned structures, mountain silence. And silence, in places like that, never feels empty. It feels occupied, not always by something supernatural, sometimes by history, sometimes by memory, sometimes by the simple fact that generations of people have walked those same hills carrying fear, caution, and stories with them. A place absorbs that, not in a magical way, necessarily, not only by ghosts but by repetition. The same warnings, the same losses, the same uneasy respect. It is possible that many Appalachian rules began as practical advice. That is another reason they endure. Imagine you are deep in the woods as night approaches. You are tired. Your sense of direction is slipping. You hear something behind you. If you stop every few seconds and spin around in panic, you lose rhythm. You lose focus. You may leave the trail. You may waste time. You may make exactly the kind of impulsive decision that gets people hurt. So maybe, at one level, don't look back. Simply meant, keep moving. Stay on the path. Do not let fear control your body. If that is true, then the rule is brilliant, because it disguises survival advice as folklore. And people remember folklore better than instructions. Stay calm and maintain direction. Sounds reasonable. Don't look back. Sounds unforgettable. It sounds like something spoken by someone who learned the rule the hard way. That kind of warning sticks to the mind because it carries weight. It sounds lived in, not theoretical. And once a practical warning gains emotional power, it becomes larger than its original purpose. It begins to gather shadows around it. People start adding meaning. Maybe looking back is bad luck. Maybe it invites something. Maybe it signals weakness. Maybe it tells whatever is following you that you know it is there. Maybe that is the moment you stop being an observer and become part of the story. That interpretation might be the darkest of all, because in that version, the danger does not begin when something enters the woods. The danger begins when you acknowledge it. When you turn around, you are not just checking your surroundings. You are answering. You are confirming contact. You are stepping across a line you did not know was there. And that idea taps into something ancient in human psychology. The fear that attention itself is dangerous. That some things remain harmless only as long as they remain unnoticed. That to see them is to wake them. And once that thought enters your mind, every sound in the mountains really about escape or about refusal. Refusal to engage. Refusal to confirm. Refusal to let the unknown become mutual. Maybe that is the real meaning of the rule. Not that something behind you wants to catch you, but that it wants to be recognized. That it wants you to break first, to stop, to turn, to give in to the one urge human beings are worst at controlling: curiosity. Because curiosity feels innocent. But in dark folklore, curiosity is often the first mistake. People open the wrong door because they want to know. They follow the voice because they want to be sure. They turn around because uncertainty becomes unbearable. And the moment uncertainty becomes unbearable, the story wins. That is what makes "Don't Look Back" such a perfect Appalachian command. It is not a test of speed. It is a test of discipline. Can you keep walking without answers? Can you resist the pull of fear long enough to deny its shape? Can you leave the unknown unknown? Most people like to think they could, but deep down, many of us already know the truth. We would look, not because we are brave, not because we are foolish, but because not knowing would begin to feel worse than knowing. And that may be the cruel genius of the whole warning. It weaponizes the human need for certainty. The mountains do not have to chase you. They only have to let your own mind do the work. That is why this rule feels bigger than a single region. It touches something universal. Still, in Appalachia, it hits differently, because these mountains already feel like a place where ordinary logic can thin out. A place where roads bend into emptiness. Where weather erases confidence. Where old churches, back porches, hunting paths, and family stories overlap in ways outsiders never fully understand. That is why so many people project horror onto Appalachia, sometimes unfairly, sometimes lazily, but often because the terrain itself invites myth. It feels like a place where warnings would survive, a place where people would pass down rules without bothering to explain them, a place where explanation if you hear something behind you, don't look back. No detailed theology, no map, no footnotes, just a command. And commands like that do not need certainty to endure. They only need emotional truth. The truth that some environments make human beings feel watched. The truth that darkness makes imagination predatory. The truth that fear changes the body before it changes the mind. And the truth that once you are alone in a forest old enough to make you feel temporary, even the dumbest superstition starts sounding wise. Maybe that is why the line keeps spreading. Maybe that is why it stays with people. Because even if you do not believe in mountain spirits, even if you do not believe in cursed trails, hidden things, or voices in the trees, you still understand the feeling. That prickling sense at the back of the neck. That urge to speed up for no reason. That instinctive certainty that if you turn around too quickly, you might see something you cannot unsee. And maybe the most haunting possibility is this. Maybe there is nothing there. Maybe the entire rule is a machine for creating fear inside the mind. Maybe the mountains do not need an entity behind you. Maybe all they need is your isolation, your exhaustion, your imagination, and one sentence whispered at the right time. In a way, that is even more disturbing, because it means the oldest predator in the woods was never a creature. It was your own mind, trying to survive an environment too large to fully trust. And still, even after saying all that, even after stripping away the ghosts and the internet myths, and the dramatic storytelling, the warning remains. It remains because something about it feels earned. It feels like one of those rules that only exists because enough people once felt afraid in the same way. Enough people once walked through the same dark, heard the same unplaceable sound, felt the same pressure between their shoulders, and kept moving without daring to turn. So whether the rule is ancient folklore, modern horror, survival instinct, or all three at once, it has already done what all great legends do. It has made the world feel slightly less safe. Not through proof, takes root in a place like Appalachia, it becomes hard to remove. Because from that moment on, every trail carries the idea. Every lonely road at dusk, every patch of fog between the trees, every unexplained sound just outside the beam of a flashlight. And somewhere, always, the same whisper follows. Keep walking. Do not answer. Do not stop. And whatever you do, never look back. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more dark mysteries, folklore, lost histories, and places that feel wrong for reasons no one can fully explain. And in the comments, tell me this. What is the strangest unwritten rule you have ever heard? Because sometimes the scariest stories are not the ones about monsters, but the ones about rules. Rules people repeat for so long that no one remembers where they began. Only that breaking them feels like a mistake. And out in the Appalachian Mountains, that feeling might be the only warning you ever get.